guys, welcome to iDevice Central channel. I'm Joe Snow, and in today's video we're having some fun dissecting the iOS 10 GM. But before we start and before we get into the core and we're going to explain what's next and what's new on this GM, I'm going to clarify what the GM is. So before we start, GM stands for Gold Master. Gold Master variants are the final pieces of a beta software that are going to be released. So the GM is basically the same thing as the iOS 10 being released to the public 2 weeks from now. So this is exactly how the iOS 10 would look like. Just in case some bugs might appear on this version, they will be corrected and a new IPSW will be created. But either way, if there are no bugs and no problems with the Gold Master version with the GM, advertised as iOS 10.0.1, this will be the final version that everybody will install, Windows or Mac, no matter on their devices, 2 weeks from now. So you probably know that it was released yesterday during the event when iOS 10 and also the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus were released and advertised for the public media. They weren't released for consumers just yet, but it was announced. So let's just get straight into it, but we're not going to get into it from the standpoint of a normal user with features and so on, because you can get the features from everywhere. You can simply read the page with the changelog. We're going to get into the core of this operating system. We're going to disassemble it, to decrypt it, to open it up, crack it open, and we're going to analyze it from developer standpoint. So let's just get the IPSW. For the sake of this video, I'm going to have the iPhone 4.0 64-bit 10.0.1 IPSW, which is, of course, the Gold Master for iPhone 5S. So what we're going to do first is to analyze the new features of the root file system. What we want to know is if the root file system is still decrypted, as everybody else knows from the betas. Every beta since the iOS 10 beta 1 to the iOS 10 beta 8 had the root file system decrypted. Now let's see if the Gold Master version, which will be of course the public version for iOS 10, is still decrypted. In order to do that, you need to take your IPSW and you simply need to make it from IPSW to zip. Use zip and you double click to extract it. The extraction process will probably take a couple of seconds of minutes depending on how fast your computer is, and I'm gonna be back when the folder gets created and the file gets extracted. Okay, so we extracted it, but before we start dissecting it, I'm going to read you what the software update advertises for iOS 10. So the iOS 10 beta, the Gold Master has 1 gigabit and 76 gigabits for my device, and it says iOS 10 is the biggest release of iOS ever. A massive update to messages brings the power of the App Store to your conversations and makes messaging more personal than ever. Find your route with beautifully redesigned maps, reliable memory, and use the photos for whatever you want to use them. We're not going to read this thing till the end, it's very long, but here we have on the page a couple of features that are of course introduced in the iOS 10. Messages let you express yourself. Siri now works with apps from the App Store, which is something important because it can now send messages, make phone calls, and so on. Maps come with all new lock. Photos are all in one with intelligent search, making it easier to find people. Home is a new application. Apple Music has an all new design. Apple News has an all new design, adding bold typography. Something interesting here. Okay, accessing the information you need is easier and quicker with a redesigned lock screen and deeper 3D touch integration. This is something good. And QuickType keyboard adds new emojis. Nothing interesting here. Suggested events and contact details are added. Okay, so you can learn more about it if you go to your software update. It brings you all of the features, but we're not interested in the features. We're interested in the software itself, as I said, from developer standpoint. So I'm going to open what I decrypted right here, what I extracted from the zip, and of course we can recognize that the 2.19 gigabit file is of course the root file system. Let's try to mount it and see if it's encrypted or not. Depending on this, this is the future of the iCloud bypass and jailbreaking, because if this file is decrypted, there will be no more need for any keys for 64-bit devices or 32. If it's still encrypted as iOS 9, then the battle continues. Okay, I'm going to click skip because I don't have the patience. Okay, it says checking volumes, and probably it's already available without being necessary to decrypt it somehow. Okay, it's checking the volumes. Now the file has 2 gigabits and 19, so the checking will probably take a little bit. And as you can see, it's no longer whitetail seed, it's whitetail, the name of it. And guys, as you can see, the root file system is already decrypted, so you no longer need that keys. Let me show you what I'm talking about. When you go on the iPhone wiki right here, until the iOS 9.x whatever, if you wanted to decrypt the file system and make some modifications on it, you wanted to go to firmware, you wanted to go to iPhone, to iOS 9.x for example, and search for the ugly keys for decryption. And some keys are available, some keys are not. As you can see, for 9.3.5 we still don't have the encryption keys for neither of the devices, and for 64-bit devices like iPhone 5s, 6s and so on, there are no keys, so decryption of the iOS 9.x on iPhone 5s for example is impossible until iOS 10, of course. But for the 32-bit devices like iPhone 5C for example, the keys look like this: a page containing all the keys for all the components, including the root file system. In absence of this key, you cannot open the DMG file and see all these folders. But now with iOS 10, those things are not encrypted anymore, so you can browse the applications and the content of the iOS without any problem, which I'm pretty glad it stayed this way and Apple didn't change it in the Gold Master version, because I was afraid that the betas will be decrypted but the GM and the final release will not, but it still is. As you can see, we have all the applications, including Safari, music and so on, accessible on our fingerprint. So as you can see from here, the setup.app is also here. So there is no longer a problem, we can carry out modifications easier, and this will probably make jailbreak and most likely iCloud bypass easier. We already did it on iOS 10 beta 8 on iPhone 5s, which means that this is evolution straight ahead. So yes, for those still running iOS 9.x, guys, I want to tell you iOS 9.x is dead. Do not expect any more updates for it, do not expect any more videos from me for it in terms of releases, because there are no keys, there are nothing, and iOS 9.x will be deprecated 2 weeks from now. Which means that iOS 10 is the future and we should focus on iOS 10, because iOS 9.x in 2 weeks will be history. This is the reality, it's not our fault. So yeah, plan out obsolescence at its finest. Now let's go and verify the kernel. This is my favorite part, and I'm going to tell you why. The kernel is one of the most important parts of the iOS. Here it is stored this way. Now kernel cache release N51 is the iPhone 5s 6.2. I'm going to extract the kernel from the IPSW of the Goldmaster iOS 10, and I'm going to try to decrypt it, and also I'm going to try to disassemble it using Hopper. Now, warning, huge developer spoilers ahead, so yeah. What you need to do first is to take the kernel cache. This is something you know. Now, if you have all the tools in place, you can go straight on the terminal and decrypt it as me if you want to analyze it yourself, if you are probably interested in reverse engineering and jailbreaking. If you don't, you can follow up the video from the card app here, or from the annotation right here, or in the description, in which I show you exactly how you can decrypt the kernel of the iPhone 5s or any other kernel on iOS 10, and all the tools and how to install them, of course. I already have them installed, so I'm going to open the terminal and I'm going to go straight into the decryption of this kernel. So at first, the terminal has to be open, you have to be logged in, and I'm going to make this window bigger for you to be able to see what I'm going to do. As I said, this is a strange iOS 10 Goldmaster review. It's more from the developer standpoint, not from a average user standpoint. So we're dissecting it to the core and back. And we're on the core right now. Okay, so I'm going to at first want to decrypt it. So I'm going to call the application called LZSSDec. In my previous video, which is in the description, in the cards and in an annotation right now, you can see how you can install this thing and how you can compile it yourself. I'm going to write O, and now we need to get the feed phase. Now, if you're experienced in reverse engineering, you probably know what feed phase means. But if you don't, I'm going to show you. You need iHex or any other hex editor, but iHex is available in the App Store for the Mac. And I'm going to open it. And I'm going to load the kernel as it is from the IPSW into it, because in the form the kernel comes into IPSW, even though it's not encrypted with the IS key bag, it's still in a compressed format, and we need to decompress it in order to be able to analyze the Kexts inside it and to analyze all the interrupts and all the functions inside it to be able to find vulnerabilities or changes inside the iOS 10 Gold Master. So I'm going to load it right here, and as you can see, it will give you the hex variable of it. Now what we need to find is, of course, the feed phase, as I call it. The feed phase is, of course, this one right here. This is the feed phase, and we need to use it. Wrong feed phase. This is the actual feed phase. Sorry, pretty tired. It starts with FFCFFAAD. If you translate it from the Indians, on the big Indian and small Indian, you're going to little Indian, you're going to get the 0x feed phase back. This is already, here you can change the Indians. Okay, so you need to take the point of it. It's 436. The offset we're interested is 436. Copy the offset. Yours might be different, and then we're going to insert the kernel. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to simply copy the file from here, put the bracket back, and we're going to create a new file. In order to do that, I'm going to copy the handle of my desktop address in order to create it on the desktop, and I'm going to write decrypted kernel.mac.arm. Hit the enter key and it will create the file automatically on your desktop, and here it is. And now we're able to use Joker and also Hopper in order to see the Kexts and to see the full kernel. So at first I want to see the full list of the Kexts or the drivers inside the kernel. So in order to do that, I'm going to use a tool created by OS6book.com, and it's a tool created for, of course, OS 6. I'm going to open terminal again. Need to close the first variant. I don't want it restored. Please close it. Okay. And I'm going to make it bigger again because I want you to see what I'm doing right here. So view bigger, bigger, and bigger. And now I'm going to call, of course, I have Joker right here. It's in the description, the video where you get how to use it. And I'm going to use the Joker Universal. If you hit the enter key, it will give you the options. I'm going to insert A and bring the decrypted kernel cache right here. So here will be the full Kext list. Okay, there we go. So if we go right here, you can see that the full Kext list of the iOS 10 Gold Master build is right here with all the addresses. And you can definitely, if you're a developer, you're now in heaven knowing all this, because until this point on iOS 9.6, knowing those things was a pretty great thing and pretty hard thing, because you needed keys, you needed the correct feed phase and so on. Now iOS 10 makes decryption faster and much better. I'm going to show you though what happens if you loaded the kernel without decrypting it and without finding the correct feed phase. So I'm going to load the same thing, the Joker -a, but instead of the decrypted file, I'm going to load the original file that comes in the Gold Master iOS 10 IPSW. And as you can see, it will bring us this error. Don't feed me the kernel cache when it's compressed. LZSS decrypted first. And this is what we did, okay? So this is how it looks when you make it correctly. And now I want to show you how it looks disassembled. In order to do that, I'm going to use Hopper disassembler, as I said. Keep in mind, spoilers ahead for developers. Try the demo. I'm going to go to File, Read Executable to disassemble. and I gotta go to desktop and load the file that we decrypted, not the original file. The original file is in a encrypted enclosure and you cannot see it properly. And as you can see, it gets recognized as Mac O application. Go and click OK, and it will start analyzing. And you will be able to see everything related to the kernel of the iOS 10 GM build. So the iOS 10 GM Goldmaster build is up for a few hours and we already decrypted the kernel. Oh, sad. Anyways, this is everything related to the checksums, but what I want to see is the exact version in order to show you what I'm talking about. But in order to do that, we have to wait for the Hopper to analyze it. Oh yeah. Here we go. Darwin Kernel version 16.0. So this is basically all the details that you need about the kernel. And this is shown when you write this thing, uname A. As you can see, Darwin, your local name, 15.6.0 Darwin kernel. Because the kernel from the OS 6 and the kernel from iOS, it's kind of the same in terms of structure, based on the Unix and XNU kernel, you will get the same result if you write this thing on an iPhone terminal, if you're jailbroken. So basically this is the correct kernel. I'm going to show you why it's important to get this thing. You know, if you go here on the iPhone Wiki on the kernel page, you can learn more about the kernel itself, but you can also find all the versions of the kernel, and it starts from Darwin and goes straight ahead, as you can see, till the end. All the kernel versions that were ever built for all the devices are here. And as you can see, the iOS 10.0.1 GM, the one we have right here, has the version Darwin kernel version 16.0.0, Sunday, August 28, 2036. So this is what we should see when we disassemble it. Darwin kernel version 16.0.0, Sunday, August 28, 2036. So we did a good job decrypting the kernel and we got the exact thing that developers got. So from this point you can start on decrypting, you can start on analyzing the code. Even though the iOS 10 GM Goldmaster version was released a few hours ago, you already decrypted the kernel and you're already ready to search for exploits. Good on you. And this is, as I said, everything that it contains, every function. But as I said, this is more for developers who know how to do a reverse engineering and who know what to do if they manage to find a vulnerability. If you're just a user that don't know how to do that and you're not interested in that, I'm pretty sorry that I get you bored over this minutes. But if you want to download the beta software or the GM variant, you can either go to the iPhone Wiki right here and, sorry, I'm on the page. Navigate to the iPhone Wiki directly, the link is in the description, go to firmware. If you don't want to update via OTA, you can click the beta firmware right here, select the iPhone if you have an iPhone, iOS 10, and you will be able to get all the iterations. For iPhone 5s, for example, I have everything, including the 10.0.1 GM, and if you click the IPSW, you can download it and install it with Windows. With Xcode. On Windows, you can still do it if you use Libby mobile device. I do have tutorials on that on my channel, check them out. But on a Mac, you need to have Xcode Beta, this application right here, downloaded. You can get it from your Apple Beta software portal. You go to developer.apple.com and you're able to do that. And if you want to download via OTA, which means on the phone directly without hassling with any IPSWs, you can navigate to beta.apple.com. It's free and it gives you the ability to log in. And after you log in, you don't have to be paid account. You simply need to log in and you will click on the profiles. So this is how you're going to do it. So yeah. Everything you need is in the description. Do not forget to actually go on Twitter, follow me on Twitter, and let's talk. You can ask me questions. You can see what I post. I actually post iOS related stuff and so on. Decryptions and curiosities I found on the firmwares. So be sure to check me out on Twitter, follow me, and do not forget to like this video if you like our dissection into the iOS 10 Goldmaster. And if you think this is a kind of different way to review a new software. Thanks for watching. I'm Joe Snow. You are watching iDevice Central channel. Until the next time, peace out.